we were bombed, we were shot at, and my family had to leave everything we owned in the village, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was everything that we owned.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone. My guest today left her native Vietnam as a teenager, 3 days before the Fall of Saigon in 1975. She was educated both in the United States and Europe before beginning a 27-year career in primary care with Mid-Atlantic Kaiser Permanente Group. So, let's hear Dr. LoAn Nguyen tell her story. What a terrific pleasure it is for me today to be speaking with Dr. LoAn Nguyen. LoAn, I know that you're located in the Mid-Atlantic area, but I can't really tell from your CV what city you're located in right now. So share that with us.
Yeah, I live in Vienna, Virginia, which is right outside the Beltway of Washington, D.C.
So you're right in the thick of it, right?
Yes.
Well, we're really happy to have you here today. You have such a fascinating story, I think, and I'm so grateful that you have agreed to speak with us. Many times on Prescription for Success, we sort of begin the story at the point where a person begins their medical education. But in your case, I think the story that predates your medical education is really compelling. And I would like for you to share that with us. I know that you were part of a large number of people who escaped from Vietnam around 1975. I happen to remember that era very well. I was actually a medical student watching people hanging on to the skids of helicopters and trying to get out of Saigon. So pretty special for me to be able to speak with someone who has been there. But let's go back even a little further than that. Obviously, you grew up in Vietnam. Tell us a little bit about what your childhood was like, and if you experienced any dreams at that point that someday that you would be a physician. What was it like being a child during a terrible time in our history?
Yes, I grew up during the war. My parents were from the North. And as you remember, in 1954, where there was a Geneva agreement that the country was divided into, North Vietnam was communist, and the South would be a republic. And my parents were very intimately aware of what it was like to live under communism. So they decided that to immigrate south to have a free environment to bring up their children. And so when they immigrated south with very little asset with them, my parents were not educated. They were part of a village in the north. My father was imprisoned by Viet Minh. As you remember, Viet Minh fought the French war. So he experienced what Viet Minh, which later become communist, the life would be like. And when they moved south, they settled in a small village in the central part of the country called Dalat. I don't know if you're familiar with their geography there.
I did take the opportunity to check that out on Google, and it appears to be today a very pleasant little village that attracts some tourists and even some American immigrants. But
Yes,
I'm much
yes.
more interested to know what life was like there when you
Yeah.
arrived.
Yeah, so I was born in Saigon, and when they immigrated south, they started with Saigon, and then they moved south to Dalat, and I was about maybe 6 months old when we moved there. So I grew up in a very rural, poor area of a village where they settle about 40 North Vietnamese families. So they made everything from bare hands.
Wow.
They build houses for each other, and it's like a community of just North Vietnamese who settles. So I grew up in that very carefree environment. The woods are my playground, and the forest is where I enjoy games with friends.
So I would just like to make sure I understand. It sounds like that a fair number of people in the village of Dalat were there for exactly the same reason that your family was. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct. We all call ourselves immigrants, even though we say people. That everyone escaped the north to go south, and so I grew up there. And we were not touched by the war initially in that village until the Tet Offensive in 1968. Then the war came to us.
That was a big deal.
That was a huge deal for us.
The young people that are hearing this podcast are probably not even aware of that, but the Tet Offensive was sort of the beginning of the end, I think, for the Republic of South Vietnam. But go ahead. I apologize for interrupting.
No. It's nice to have someone who understand and have some visual of that era. So in 1968, when the Tet Offensive, we were bombed, we were shot at, and my family had to leave everything we owned in the village, which wasn't a whole lot, but it was everything that we owned. And so we moved to downtown of Dalat, which is what you saw in the internet. Mm-hmm. So I was 13 years old at the time. And that was the first time that I felt the war really was really close by my backyard. And so we lived through a period of time where nighttime is the we call Viet Cong or VC will come to the village and will demand this or that. And during the daytime, the South Vietnamese soldiers will come and say, "Who did you talk to last night?" So we caught between the two sides quite a bit. So the war really touched us around 1967, but the real big impact was 1968, the Tet Offensive, which is the end of 1967, beginning of 68. And so we moved to further into town, where I continued with my high school. That time, as you can imagine, because of the war, we have neighbors that will go to battle, will go to military and get killed. I have two uncles. One was killed and one was missing in action. He went for a campaign and never came back.
Yeah, LoAn, I apologize for the interruption, but I am curious to know in this area where you initially lived, were you aware, or do you think your family was aware of who were the potential communist sympathizers? I'm sure there must have been some people in town that were okay with being a part of the bigger Vietnam, but I'm wondering, was there talk about town? Were there rumors around about who you could trust or who you couldn't trust, or was it just a matter of uncertainty where you didn't really know where you could be safe?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So in the village where I was, up until Tet Offensive, everyone was against communism. Uh-huh. We escaped them to come. So that was I could say that it's pretty sure, 90% sure, 99% sure that these people are not going to be sympathizers. But when I moved to Dalat, to the town, in my circles and in the neighborhoods that I'm in, I can't think of anyone that I would think to be sympathizers. Mm-hmm. Although when the war ended, after the war ended, I've learned from my friends, my colleagues in high school, that some of our teachers were actually sympathizers.
Wow.
But there was no way that we had any inkling or any idea that they were.
So let's get back to your education.
So I went to high school, and during high school year, this is how the germination of medicine came into for me. I was a very curious kid. I would read, and I would look for information by going to the library and books. And the access is very limited. But I was very curious about if someone said to me that I have a medical concern, I would go look it up and see what do they have. So that was my curiosity more than anything. Didn't think about being a physician, because in my circle of my family, I have a huge extended family, and I'm the first of the three that went to college.
That's interesting.
So very, very little education in within the family. And then in my ninth grade, I decided that I had TB.
You decided?
I decided that I had TB based on what I read. I decided that I had TB.
I see.
So I came to my father and I said, I heard that there was a clinic that was arranged by missionary. Medical mission people that came to a clinic. Would you take me there and to make sure I didn't have TB? My dad humored me and said, "You don't look that sick to me." But I said, "But just please take me." And so we went to the clinic. We left like 5 o'clock in the morning. We got there by 7. And by bicycle, by the way. And then as I was watching people coming into the clinic, many of them had to be carried into the clinic, and many was just wrapped themselves in a lot of blankets and just looked so sick. And it touched me deeply. I don't know why. It just touched me very deeply. And then my turn came to see the doctor, and he was just so kind and so I don't know what it was. Just he has an aura for a kid at that age. He has just a God aura of curing and helping people. And the thought came to my head at the end of the visit. I said to myself, I wonder what it's like to do that kind of work.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests. Whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics, Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. I've talked to a number of people who like you, got their inspiration from being a patient and interacting with medical professionals.
Yeah, because I was from a very poor family, and medical school. When I finished college, I passed my baccalaureate degree exam with really high score, and so I thought about medical school, applying to medical school. I came to my parents, and they said, we can't afford for you to go to Saigon to study. So what is your next choice? And I said, well, I guess I could go to become a teacher. So I enrolled in a University of Dalat, where in my hometown. And so I started enrolling in 1974, right after high school. During that year, is in April of that year, is when the South Vietnamese government started to fall. As you remember, the communist military people started to take one city one by one, starting from the north and down to the south.
I remember it vividly.
Right. Dalat was right in the middle of between south and central part of the country.
Believe it or not, I was actually employed as a radio announcer during those years, and I actually read that news over American radio.
Yeah. And so because of that, when it came close to Dalat, we thought, my family innocently thought, my mother and father instantly thought, well, perhaps the country will get divided again. And so why don't we go south, the further south? So we went back down to Saigon to be with my relative. And then in April of that year, as you can see that on TV, that it was the fall of the South government was imminent. And I was at a loss. My family was at a loss. What will become of us?
Sorry, you were how old at that point?
19.
Okay.
I had a cousin who married to an American GI, and they were stationing in Guam. This is the magic of the story. So my cousin had a mother and a brother in Saigon at the time. And somehow her husband was able to connect with the American embassy, and they said they called my cousin, my aunt and my cousin, and said, we need to get you out of the country because you are affiliated with American having American family in America. We need to get you out. And so give me a list of people that you need to get out. And my cousin, who was like a brother to me, thought of me and another cousin. So he jotted his name, his mother's name, and my name, and my other cousin's name. And so the next morning, he came to my mother and father and said, this is the only chance for me to get out. So I have to leave the country. But I also have your LoAn's name on the list to leave the country. Would you let her go? Within an instant, my parents said, of course, she needs to go because she is so interested in education. And with the communists came, there's no way that she can continue with her education.
My goodness, that must have been...
It was scary.
I just can't imagine what your parents must have been feeling and what you must have been feeling.
So he came to the place where we stay. He said, you have 2 hours to decide. I'll come back in 2 hours to pick her up if that's what you decide. And my first reaction was, how could I leave my family? I never knew anything other than my family.
Of course.
So, and my parents said, they explained and they said, you have to go because we know how much you love to study, love to learn, and that will be the end if you stay. And two is that if you go, we have some hope that you may be able to help us somehow in the future. I'm the oldest of 7 children. And so they said, your siblings will be looking for help down in the future. Maybe you're the only one that can help us. So with that reasoning, I said, okay, I'll go.
What an amazing story. Amazing. So
within 2 hours, I got picked up with, at that time, as you imagine, people running to the embassy which looking for a way to leave the country, and people who drive to the coast looking for a way to leave the country. So I got picked up by a unmarked bus that basically pitch dark. They just scoop you in, take you to the airport. And so I left with my cousin, my aunt, and my other cousin. We stay at the airport. That was April 27, which is 3 days before the actual fall of the government.
That's a pretty close call.
It was. That's why my parents was desperate to convince me to go. Since I had my kids and took them to college at one point. And I just thought back on it and said, I just cannot imagine how brave my parents were to put me on a bus. I had no idea where I was going, where I would end up, and what would happen to me. Just hope to trust in God that somehow I will be taken care of.
That is so incredible that your parents even were able to process that was unquestionably going to be the best thing for you, and that you would be the hope for everyone else. It says a lot for their wisdom and their ability to make tough choices.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I could do that. What they did.
So what's next then?
So we were at the airport for several hours, and then in the middle of the night, a cargo airplane landed, and then we just got swooped into the cargo airplane. Everyone sat on the floor of the airplane.
And this was in Saigon, where you were picked up?
Saigon, yeah, in Tanzania Airport, and we flew to Subic Bay. That was the first time ever in my life that I saw the ocean. Never been to the ocean before. And it was when the airplane landed, it was quite an emotional response to me. And I just thought, my family is an ocean away, and I'm here by myself. It was just incredible.
I can't imagine.
But and then we stay at Subic Bay, which is one of the military installation, I think, for about 2 days. I had some English in high school, so I could hear simple conversations and could pick out words and sort of guess at it. But speaking was out of the question. So I did not speak English at all. And then we stayed in Guam for a month in the refugee camp. And after a month, my cousin and his family stayed behind in Guam. And I went with the refugee. I asked them to just let me go with the refugee because there may be some hope for me with the government hope to really get my goal set to go study. I would work, I would get a job, anything that I needed to do to continue my education. But that was my only goal in life.
That was a pretty brave decision for you as well.
I just felt that I had to fulfill what my parents wanted me to do, and that is to pursue my education. That there were opportunities to get a job and just get sponsored and get a job. But I said, as long as I could get a job and go to study, then I would do it. But just get a job alone is just not what I would do. So I talked with my cousin, did not want me to leave, obviously. But I said to her, look, you can't help me go to school. So I would like to look for opportunities to do it. So let me go. So I went to the refugee camp and went to Indiantown Gap, which is another camp in Pennsylvania, as you probably remember, and stayed there from the end of May to September. So during that time, I started to learn English. And the way I went about learning English was I went to the headquarters of the refugee camp and asking them to let me help do whatever that clean or whatever that I have to do, just as long as I'm surrounded with English-speaking people, so I can learn.
So your mastery of English used the immersion
Yes.
method, so to speak.
That's right.
That's really fascinating.
They assigned me to work with a lady named Jane. I don't know her. I don't remember her last name. I never knew her last name. Jane was easiest to remember. So I worked with Jane, and what I did was she asked me to file, so I could read, so I could file, just be her assistant and putting files in place for her. I could follow simple instructions and do the filing for her. And she asked me, what would you like to do? Where would you like to be resettled? And my answer was always the same: as long as I find a place that I can go to school, and that's what my place. And so I waited and waited. And every day my friends would be leaving the camp. People I know would leave the camp. And I was thinking, oh my God, am I going to be the last one here? Because I couldn't find that opportunity. But finally, in September, there was a Lutheran church that near Juniata College in Pennsylvania. And he said, well, you know what? The college could use some students. So he sponsored me to come to Juniata College to start my education.
I want to interrupt you for just one moment. Juniata is a very small school.
Yes.
But it is also a highly regarded school.
Yes.
They rank way up in the numbers of students that go on to graduate school, and there's some fairly famous graduates from there in addition to you. And that just happened to be a spot that was available, and you were ready at the time.
Yes.
So tell us about your experience there.
This is about America that I love. So I got to Juniata College, and the next day I got called to the dean's office. And the dean, I did not understand much of what he said, but all I could understand was that I did not have money, and it's a private college, and so therefore I couldn't stay at the college. And I left his office and just in tears and said, he said to me, State College is a public school, cheaper. It's 30 miles north of here. Perhaps you can go there. So that was his words. That's
very interesting. I don't know if you were even aware, but Juniata was actually established by a group of Anabaptists, which is a different group of Christians. And in the beginning, it was there for the purpose of educating students who had no financial resources.
That's right.
And yet you couldn't stay because of lack of resources.
But wait. And so somehow my story, my situation, my plight was unknown to a professor. His name was Cornelius Freiters, who's a Dutchman, who was a refugee during World War II himself. And somehow he heard about the situation. I don't know how and who told him, but he came to my aid and he said, we have to do something to help you. We cannot send you to State College. You here, you belong here. And I'm going to help. I'm going to figure out how to help you. So he sat down one weekend. He typed 40 letters. At that time, there's no emails that you can send. So he typed up 40 letters and he sent to 40 churches in the community of Huntingdon, Pennsylvania. And the response was overwhelming. So all the churches put in their whatever donation they had. It covered me for my first trimester at Juniata College.
My goodness.
That's how I started. And so in the meantime, I started to work. First trimester, I could not enroll in any classes because my English was not good enough. So I would take math classes, physics, and math. That required very little English.
Good start for a medical education.
Yeah. So learn English. So I started with Sesame Street. And then I graduated to soap operas.
Very good.
And that's how I learned about American culture firsthand.
That's not a bad place to learn.
No, it's a dialogue, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
understanding and learning how people respond to idioms that people use in their speaking.
Yeah.
Because reading, I was able to read with the dictionary, but speaking and how the dialogues happen was very different. So
Indeed.
so that's how I started. And then the second year, my English is a little bit better, so I dipped into a class in education because I thought I could become a teacher here. And then I started taking chemistry because I always was curious about nature and how things work in the body. And so I took chemistry, and I was really captivated by chemistry. And then I met with a chemistry professor. That was her first year at Juniata College. So she would ask me a lot of questions. I would tell her about what I'm doing, and she basically became my mentor.
That's a fascinating story. You don't run into a lot of people who claim they were fascinated by freshman chemistry, and yet you felt right at home.
Yeah, I did. I've just totally captivated. I would take biochemistry, and I just could not have enough of Leninger.
Wow.
I read Leninger cover to cover and just enjoy learning. And so I was talking with my friend Ruth Reed, my professor, and I told her about my life in Vietnam, and I told her about the germination that I had with that clinic episode, and how I thought about medicine, and that was just a wish. And she said to me, opportunity is here in America. A wish can come true if you work at it. And so she sort of told me that I could. I said, but culturally, I'm not really savvy enough to deal with people. So how would I do that? And she said, you could, if you can come to Vietnam and here and excel in college in chemistry, you can do anything.
I'd go along with that.
And thank you. And so she encouraged me to keep that dream. So I actually took the MCAT in my junior year, brave enough to do it. And needless to say, my science score was high and my verbal score was in the basement. But at that time, my father passed away from an illness. And so my mother, with 6 children, needed help.
Were your parents still in Vietnam at that time?
Yes.
I see.
My family was in Vietnam. So I asked Ruth and say, what kind of job can I get after college to make money to send home to my mother and my siblings? And so I said, Ruth, what do you think about medtech? I could do medtech, right? And Ruth laughed at me and said, over my dead body, that you would go to medtech. So she came to me and she said, here are some graduate schools that you can enroll in. And a graduate school sometimes give students stipends so that you could save some of that money and send home. And very fortunately, the exchange rate was so tremendous that I could send home $100 to $200 a month, and they could live comfortably.
Wow.
So she said, here are some applications, fill it out. So I didn't know what graduate school was and what that was about. I knew about PhD programs, but I didn't know what that meant, and how would I do something like that? It's just beyond my comprehension. Having a PhD under my belt. And she said, just fill it out and I'll pay for the application fee. And as a result of that, I got accepted by Johns Hopkins chemistry department for my graduate school.
Well, now I'm not surprised at all that you were accepted to graduate school, considering what a dedicated student that you are. But correct me if I'm wrong, there was a gap in there where you were not actually in this country. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So that's another story on its own.
Well, we want to hear it.
Okay. So in my sophomore year, Juniata decided to have a exchange student program because Juniata is a very liberal arts school, and they wanted to bring in other people from different culture to the campus to enrich the now we call it diversity, but the diversity of the campus. So they have an exchange program where two students from Juniata would go to France, and then 2 students from France will come to Juniata. And at that time, I should say that in my first year in college, I did not hear from my family, and my family did not hear from me. We had no idea where we were, and my mother and my father knew that I was living because I was able to send a letter to a very distant relative in France. And she would then open it up, put it in a French envelope, and send it to Vietnam as though I was living in France.
Wow.
So that's the communication that I had with my family. So when I heard about this program, I said, wow, maybe this is an opportunity. So in my sophomore year, I took a year of French. And at the end of the year, there were no other students that wanted to do that. So the college said, okay, you can go. So I went to France to study at a chemical engineering school in Lille in northern France.
And as far as acquiring the language, did you have some experience with French because of the previous French influence in Vietnam, or was it just totally new to you?
I had some 2 years of high school French during my high school. I did study French for about 2 years, maybe an hour every couple of weeks of French, just basic French.
But at that point, it was a Vietnamese to French translation. But when you went to France on the exchange program, did it become an English-French translation, or were you still going from Vietnamese to French?
I still went from Vietnamese to French, and maybe somewhere in between English to French.
That is
so
amazing.
I have 3 switches in my head.
That's amazing. I'm sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead.
So because the classes were all in French, but fortunately, our chemistry was and computers and math were all in a universal language. So I was able to get by and learn just ordinary French in between.
What a story. All right. Well, I'll let you get back to your pursuit of the PhD at this point, and I apologize for the interruptions,
No.
but this is really fascinating.
So when I came back to the Juniata College, I enrolled in at Johns Hopkins. That's where I met one of my classmates who became my husband.
I see.
4 years later, and as he finished a year ahead of me, and I was writing up my dissertation, and we were about to get married, and we sat down and we think about going to academic, postdoc, academic, and all of that, planning for both of our careers, and the medicine just kept churning in my head. So I told him, I said, well, there's another option that I could think about medicine again. And then I said, but oh no, that's too hard. I don't think I could go through that after all this work to get my PhD. And he's the one that actually nudged me to say, he said, that is your dream for so long. If you don't apply now, that means never. And you will always look back and say, what if?
Wow. You're very fortunate to have had the right person to encourage you at every critical step along the way. And I think that's really fascinating, particularly when you were at a point where you were actually using your status as a student to make money that you could send home to your family.
Yeah, I think I felt so lucky. I feel so incredibly lucky that I feel like I have all the stars are lined up to help me.
Agreed.
And I'm so thankful and grateful for this country to give me that opportunity that I would never never think that I could realize otherwise.
Well, having heard what I've heard, I think you could survive pretty much anywhere. But let's get back to the story of getting you into medical school.
So I applied. I bought a biology book, and I started studying biology after I decided that I'm going to take the MCAT again. I did well, and I got accepted to Maryland University, and that's where I enrolled in 1984.
And now the question that I ask everybody, I speak to a lot of physicians who grew up dreaming of becoming a physician, but many times when they got to medical school, it wasn't exactly what they were expecting. So I'm fascinated to know how it felt to you at that point.
I have to say, the first 2 years was tough. The first 2 years was all about cramping for exam. I have, in my life, I like to reason things out. I like to logically figure things out. Memorization was not my forte at all. Mm-hmm. So I struggle with anatomy. It was really, really hard for me as a subject matter. But I said, there are more than this. There's more than classwork. There are human beings out there. There are people out there. There are patients out there. So I pushed on. And then third year and fourth year, oh my God, it's like, it was incredible. I couldn't describe to you what it felt like to have a stethoscope in my neck and the beeper that goes off. That somebody needs my help.
What a great story. LoAn, I have to say, I'm sure you do feel uncommonly blessed, considering the obstacles that were in your way from the beginning. But you certainly showed that they can be overcome, and I have no doubt that you have been an incredible blessing to every patient and every student that you've come in contact through the years. And I'm just going to go right out there on a limb and say that the world is clearly better because you were part of it. And thank you for that. And I want to thank you for taking the time to be on Prescription for Success today. We've reached the point in the program that I like the best, and that is when I get out of the way and let the guest do the talking. So I'm going to pause for a moment and close my mic, and Dr. LoAn Nguyen is going to share her prescriptions for success.
Thank you. So, like everyone in medicine, I have been keenly aware of the burnout phenomenon, especially among primary care physicians. There are many factors contribute to that. Part of my coping is to find resilience from within. Adversity has helped me realize my potential that I did not know that I had. Another strategy I have is to have some degree of self-compassion, mitigating self-criticism. Instead of cultivate a mindset of life is a learning journey. In teamwork, I found it helpful to create a team culture that helped me maintaining and making an effort to even enhancing human connections while leveraging technologies to provide high quality of care for my patients. I also think having a mentor or mentors has been invaluable along my journey. They help create a safe space for me to reflect on my own feelings and thoughts. Last but not least, my family life has been a pillar of my well-being. They provide safe, happy, and renewal space for me. At work, I have a second family that supports me in providing care for patients. Keeping my two families in balance has allowed me to thrive. Thank you.
Well, Dr. LoAn Nguyen, I don't know how to thank you enough for taking the time to be with us today and sharing your story. It's been a great inspiration for me, and I'm sure it's going to be a great inspiration for our listeners as well. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to tell the audience where they can find you if you wish to be found.
Sure. You can reach me at LoAn, LoAN.T, like in Thomas, .NGUYEN20 @gmail.com. Again, loan.t.nguyen20@gmail.com.
Well, Dr. LoAn Nguyen, it has been a great pleasure speaking with you, and I thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cook, Randy. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, we really appreciate a review from you, and a 5-star rating helps us a lot. These ratings give our show more visibility and help us reach more listeners as well. And if you'd like access to exclusive content, head on over to our Patreon page where you can see membership-only material, including personal rapid-fire Q&A sessions with our guests and more. To be sure you never miss an episode, visit our website at rxforsuccesspodcast.com to subscribe. And while you're there, you can offer your very own personal prescription for success on SpeakPipe. Special thanks to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music for the show. And remember, be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.